Hill. Teammates joined by mutual destiny, each the son of a Grand Prix legend. Graham Hill was the epitome of the Grand Prix driver of the 60s. Dashing, debonair, the most experienced of his era, master of the streets of Monaco, and twice a world champion. Damon's numbers compare well with his father's. He has taken more poles with 19 and won more races, 20 and counting. But unlike his father, Damon has yet to win a world title. Gilles Villeneuve was the enfant terrible of the sport in the 70s, blindingly quick, win or crash trying. His incredible style carried Gilles to a career total of 6 Grand Prix wins, but he died in a racing crash short of a title. Jacques has posted rookie numbers that rank with the gods, including 3 victories. A championship would take the family name to a level his legendary father never reached. The younger generation of Hill and Villeneuve have carried their team, Williams-Renault, to a record-tying 8th Constructors' Championship. Now there is only one title to decide. One or the other could be world driving champion. It might happen today in historic Monza. Welcome to one of the world's great racing circuits on the former Royal Park that is now the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza for round 14 of the World Driving Championship. Welcome to Northern Italy and to a race that every Grand Prix driver wants to win. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. With me once again this week, Derek Bell, who knows what it's like to race for Ferrari here at Monza.
Yes, they're quite fanatical. The Italian fans, of course, they do have a national car, and that's the Ferrari.
The irony this weekend, of course, is that Damon Hill, the World Championship leader, has been told by his team his services will not be needed next year. He can win the championship today. To do so, he must win the race, and Jacques Villeneuve must finish 4th or worse. Villeneuve only hopes to continue the championship to the next race in Portugal. Now let's check this week's buzz, Derek.
Well, there's lots of rumors going around, but it could be McLaren, it could be Jordan, and even rumors about him going to Benetton. In 1997, it will be West McLaren. Marlboro will split from McLaren at the end of 1996 following a 26-year partnership. After considerable dissension, the constitution of Grand Prix racing has been revamped until the year 2001. The real story this week is Damon Hill being replaced by Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Over for an interview with them.
You can understand my disappointment. I've led the championship. I believe I've turned myself around over the winter as a driver and turned myself into a leading driver. If I wasn't one before, I'm leading the championship all season and have won, as I said, 7 races, still leading the championship by a healthy 13 points with 3 races to go. And my view is always that the reward for winning races should be the opportunity to continue to drive the best equipment.
I think Frank Williams signed me because he wants to beat Michael next year.
Bold words from a man who has but 1 podium in his Grand Prix career as opposed to a 20-game winner. We'll be back with more from Italy in just a moment. Welcome back to historic Monza, where the Grand Prix of Italy is now just moments away. Bob Varsha, Derek Bell with you. Before we get to the start, let's cruise the paddock with this edition of James Allen's Off-Track Buzz, taking you inside the most exclusive stop in the paddock, the Ferrari Hospitality Center. And your guide is Eddie Irvine.
Monza, 3.6 miles. It was Europe's fastest circuit. Now has 3 chicanes for safety. This is the first one, the Goodyear chicane leading into the Curva Grande. As they come in there, they're putting 210 miles an hour. Then they feed their way through the Curva Grande down to the Variante della Roccia, which leads into the Lesmos. Another 200-mile-an-hour entry, very smooth into that tight chicane, coming out to the famous old Lesmo bends down the back part of the circuit into the Ascari curve. Again, the famous Ascari curve. Very bumpy under braking into this. Lots of cars ended up in the sand last year. Screaming out of the Ascari curve down the back straight into the all-famous Parabolica, which is vital because they have to get the perfect traction, perfect line out of there, leading onto the main straight up to 210 miles an hour yet again.
Still blindingly quick. The laps average 150 miles an hour. On the front row, the title protagonists from Williams-Renault, Hill and Villeneuve. Row 2, Michael Schumacher and Mika Hakkinen. The McLaren's quick in the morning warm-up. David Coulthard has his McLaren on row 3 alongside Jean Alesi in the Benetton. Row 4 will be Eddie Irvine in the Ferrari and Gerhard Berger in the second Benetton. On row 5, Martin Brundle and Rubens Barrichello, both men apparently on the way out with the Jordan Peugeot team. Olivier Panis and Johnny Herbert, the defending champion here in Italy, will be on row 6. On row 7, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, man of the hour, and Pedro Diniz. Jasper Stappen, back from his big crash at Spa, and Ukio Katayama will be on row 8. Row 9, Mika Salo and Pedro Lamy. And on row 10, Ricardo Rosset of Brazil and Giovanni Lavaggi of Italy. As you see, the party is well underway, and we're just moments from the start of the Grand Prix of Italy. Stay with us for more from Monza. A few stragglers and celebrities and crewmen walking away from the cars, now in the hands of their drivers. A difficult track and an historic one. Let's hear from Mika Salo of the Tyrrell team about setup for Monza.
The setup for this week's Grand Prix at Monza is quite a lot different than Spa. It's a fastest circuit, so also it's the lowest downforce of the year. We use this still for the straight line speed. Rear wing, we have winglets off and a very low wing. It's very heavy braking circuit also, so that's why we need to cool the brakes well. We have a big brake dots. We run car a little bit stiffer here than anywhere else, so it can be lower also here. And for the race, Goodyear gave us the hardest compound tires what they have, so it probably makes it one-stop race.
That was Mika Salo earlier in the weekend. It's a very warm day today, slightly warmer than the conditions in qualifying yesterday. Humidity is very low, the wind very low, but they said yesterday it would stay low too, and we had a small hurricane that blew lots of leaves onto the racetrack, causing problems for, among others, Mika Salo in the Tyrrell. His Yamaha overheated when the intake ducts filled up with debris. Now the field takes off for its warm-up lap. Business is complete. We can just enjoy the cars preparing for the battle to come. Notice those piles of tires on the apex of the first 2 chicanes. Yesterday they were about 8 tires high, and it caused a bit of a fuss. Many of the drivers refused to go out in the first 10 minutes of qualifying while they talked about it. Now you see they have lowered those piles. We've got a problem for one of the Légers. That's Olivier Panis getting away slowly. Using a new C-Spec Mugen Honda V10 engine this weekend. Here are the teams through the Curva Grande on the run down to the Lesmos, Derek.
Yes, they're warming their tires up, as you know. They're with the blankets on. They're only about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so they want to give them a little bit more heat. So the guys swing the car around from side to side, and of course are warming up the brakes a bit. Although with carbon fiber brakes, you don't need too much warming up, but it just gives a little bit of confidence as you go around. You see there, Jacques Villeneuve is warming up his tires so he can get a really fast start. But apparently, it appears, having never done a start in a current Grand Prix car, they make better starts on brand new tires. If they're actually sticker tires, they get far better traction. So obviously that could be why Damon is not actually spinning the wheels and moving the car from side to side. Quite interesting.
Through the Ascari chicane, which was once a flat-out left-hander that took the life of the great Alberto Ascari in a mysterious testing crash back in the 50s. This great track has certainly seen its share of tragedy over the years, coming down to the beginning of the Parabolica corner, where Jochen Rindt crashed to his death in the Italian Grand Prix back in 1970. Interestingly, the tragedies that have fallen here have occasionally dovetailed with the careers of American drivers. In 1961, when Phil Hill became the first American world champion, his Ferrari teammate, Baron Wolfgang von Trips, was killed in a racing crash here in that race. And when Mario Andretti took his title in 1978, his teammate Ronnie Peterson suffered injuries in an early crash that eventually claimed his life as well. Let's take another look at the keys to the championship. We mentioned Damon Hill must win the race and Jacques Villeneuve finish 4th or worse for Hill to clinch. Villeneuve cannot clinch today. He can only hope to move the championship to the next 2 races at Portugal and the season finale in Japan. It's simple for Villeneuve. He must be on the podium if Hill wins this race. And in fact, Villeneuve basically must win this race or the one that follows if he is to keep his title hopes alive. He desperately needs points right now, but he has put up a great fight for the World Driving Championship in this historic rookie year. Look at the grandstands. Absolutely packed. Here come the lights, up come the revs, and here we go. Hill and Villeneuve Villeneuve starting nose to tail on the right side of your screen there, away cleanly. Schumacher will be coming up from behind Damon Hill, and one of the Benettons has leaped to the front. Is that Jean Alesi?
Must be Alesi.
Tire smoke everywhere in the back. Those are the two Jordans. There goes Michael Schumacher.
It's inevitable when they have a start like that, of course, Hill and Villeneuve are trying to push each other off the road, and it'll allow the Benetton of Alesi to sweep round the outside. It always happens. We've seen it happen before this year.
I said nose to tail. Actually, the Williams teammates side by side, as you see Jean Alesi leading them through the chicane. The Varianti headed for the Lesmos.
You can imagine those Italian fans with their hero Alesi, who's for 5 years been at Ferrari, now in a Benetton. But not anymore.
Pass for the lead. That is Damon Hill making a bid coming out of the Lesmos. It was thought that Damon might approach this race a little conservatively. Basically, all he has to do is stay ahead of his teammate. Now Alesi attacks in the Ascari chicane.
They got to go off. No, they haven't. Alesi, very nice, clean bit of driving there. No stupidness, but he was close.
The field streaming through Ascari and on to one of 3 sections of the racetrack where they will exceed 200 miles an hour. And Villeneuve now drops back to 4th behind the McLaren.
Yeah, the McLaren's obviously got a lot of power. The McLarens were 1st and 2nd quickest in warm-up this morning, so we know that they can do tremendous jobs on race setup. We've seen them quick all through practice and qualifying. But Hill is just putting out a little bit. Obviously, Alesi is slightly holding them up in a straight line, which I don't quite understand, as he has the same engines as, of course, Hill. Way up on braking, right up on the back of Hill under braking is Alesi. Those stupid tires, which I think are absolutely lethal, but fortunately nobody's hit them. Nobody wants to hit them, but of course, oh, somebody nearly hit them.
Pedro Diniz off and on in the Ligier. Through the Curva Grande. Everyone talks about the Parabolica corner. The Curva Grande is a challenge in itself as you watch Damon Hill threading through the chicane. In the warm-up, it was Coulthard, Hakkinen, Schumacher, Hill, Alesi, and Villeneuve, the top 6.
Oh, dear,
David Coulthard is off.
He was quickest in this morning's warm-up. That is a great shame. David needed a good run here. Hakkinen needs even a better run because he's not at all assured of a position for next year.
He is out from 5th place. Here's a look at those morning times. Coulthard, you just saw, buried up to his axles. His race is run. Mika Hakkinen will carry the McLaren flag. McLaren Mercedes is creeping up on it. The team looking very satisfied with their performance. Of course, they wanted to be on the front row. Mika Hakkinen led one of the timesheets. Let's see if we can spot David Coulthard. Well, might have gotten bumped off in that chicane, but
he was certainly trying to avoid the tires, and I guess he ended up... Oh, he hit the tires. Somebody's actually hit the tires. Looks a little bit like somebody's toppled the tires a bit there, but nonetheless, he's out in the sand and out of the race. But Damon is not hanging around. He's obviously saying, thank you, Frank, up yours, I'm on the way. You can keep whatever you like, boy. I'm going to win this race. I'm going to win the title. To heck with everybody else.
Well, there have been many theories put forward as to why Frank Williams would reject a world champion-elect. As you see Coulthard walking in, the young Scot. In fact, in an interview with a British motoring magazine, Motoring News, Frank said Coulthard was kicked out of the Williams team last year. Oh, someone else has hit tires.
More tires. Who was that? That had to be the McLaren or something. Now look at that. That is what is so crazy. Here we are in the greatest class of motorsport in the world, and they put tire walls up to stop the drivers from running over the curbs. If anything untoward, you have to take evasive action, which isn't your fault. You hit the tire wall, or a tire comes across in front of you, you're having an accident with that, and it can bounce on your head, kill you, just like that.
Well, that's an issue. Why put the tires there? These are supposed to be the best drivers in the world and the best cars in the world. If they want to go over the curbs and risk ending their race on the spot, that's their choice.
Yeah, what's wrong with it? They've raised the curbs, made them more jumpy, and we've seen that by Berger's incident yesterday. But at the same time, the guys aren't going to run a one-off out of choice, but things do happen. They're at such a fine limit.
Getting back to my point about the Williams team, Frank Williams admits that they pushed Coulthard out of the team in favor of Villeneuve, and they may have done it prematurely. Problems. Mika Hakkinen's front wing is askew.
So that was he that touched the tires. He'll have to come in.
But the reason they threw Coulthard out of the team and have now rejected Damon Hill is because of Michael Schumacher. And the idea that Schumacher in a competitive Ferrari would be too much for either Coulthard or Hill. Now Pedro Diniz races run. Attrition weighing in early here in Monza. As you watch Mika Hakkinen, that wing will be coming off shortly.
He's struggling with the handling, and Schumacher's all over the back of him. Wants to get by because obviously Hill and Alesi are pulling away, and they don't need that. It's a tragedy for the Mercedes-McLaren team when they've done so well the whole weekend and they get involved with tyres. Of course, you don't know that Hakkinen really hit the tyre or one was bouncing across the road in front of him because we didn't actually see the action.
Plunging down toward Ascari, dipping under the old oval that still exists at this racetrack. Never used, it's overgrown. A monument to the history of this great facility. Indy cars once ran here in what was called the Race of Two Worlds, 1957 and 58. Jimmy Bryan won, and A.J. Foyt was considered by his car owner too young to take on this racetrack, too inexperienced, so they hired a replacement driver, Juan Manuel Fangio.
Quite a good bloke in his time, he was. Oh, it's obviously Hakkinen's going in the pits. You notice that Villeneuve has dropped back quite a reasonable amount from Schumacher. Behind him was Berger. Berger's come up well, having had a diabolical practice in qualifying.
Nose piece ready in the McLaren pit area. 75-mile-an-hour speed limit in effect in the pits.
He might not lose too much time. Obviously, they're going to top up the tanks, one assumes. Fresh tyres, and off he goes. But he's going to lose quite a bit of time. But his steering wheel's all right, so he didn't damage the steering, purely the bodywork. But he's lost probably half a lap, but still a long way to go. It's a good time to lose half a lap at the beginning, not at the end. So, here's Hill overtaking one of the Tyrrells, which must have had a terrible time if he's back that far.
Oh, and he's being held up badly. Oh, that's Ukio Katayama not looking around. This is what cost Damon his race last year when he collided with Michael Schumacher's Benetton trying to lap a slower car. And now there is a rumor that there may be problems for Jacques Villeneuve. Damon Hill racing through the Italian sun. He leads the Grand Prix of Italy. We'll be back. We are back live at Monza, and as sometimes happens in live situations, action during the break. There is Damon Hill, who hit the tire pile at the apex of the second chicane, spun and stalled his Williams. The World Championship leader is out. And Jean Alesi takes the lead, and you hear this crowd who remember the Frenchman as a Ferrari driver going crazy.
Yeah, they're going crazy. Obviously, it's great for them, but poor Damon, those darn tires, they are just a joke. I think for international motor racing, to have to put a load of tires up is a farce. All right, he hit them, but it's not right in this class of racing to have tires there. He hit them. Of course, it upset the whole front of the car, and he looped it down the road, just as Gerhard Berger did yesterday.
And as you see from that list, no sign of Gerhard Berger, who pulled his Benetton to a stop on the backstretch. His teammate leads. Michael Schumacher runs second. What a difference a year makes for Michael Schumacher. A year ago, he came to this race and this racetrack as a newly announced and signed Ferrari driver with a contract calling for $50 million a year. And there were signs all over this place telling him to go home. There were kidnap threats. He had to be escorted through the garage area with an armed guard. And now he is the absolute darling of this crowd as you watch one of the Minardis pulling in, Giovanni Lavaggi's race, in some jeopardy.
Yeah, and there we have Alesi, who is the hero of Italy, and of course their newfound darling, as you said, Bob, Schumacher, first and second, and of course the wonderful Ferrari in second place, and Irvine in about fourth place in the other Ferrari.
Now let's take another look at what happened to Damon Hill moments ago. At the bottom of your screen, he has already clipped that pile of offending tires, has spun, and either broke or stalled. This is the view from his onboard camera.
Whoa, round he goes. He just nicked them. What we don't know is whether, remember before we saw a load of tires bouncing down the road, you don't know that there wasn't a tire line there a little bit askew on the side of that pack, and he came in on his committed line, and there is a tire right in the way. And that does happen a lot, because these marshals aren't running out to pick up the tires. Believe me, they're not that stupid. Not with the speeds and the braking distances of these cars, so anything could happen. But Alesi is having a glorious moment right now. Let's hope it persists longer.
Now there is Jacques Villeneuve in fourth position. This could be a tremendous boost to his title hopes, but he's running in fourth. We don't expect him to see him that far back. He may be running with a very heavy fuel load, and, well, what do you know? Heinz-Harald Frentzen, the new boy that Frank Williams so coveted, whose only podium in Formula One came in this race a year ago in another attrition-filled Grand Prix of Italy. He has now buried it up to the axles.
Yeah, we shouldn't knock poor old Frentzen, but my goodness, he wasn't picked up by Mercedes. Norbert Haug, competitions director, said, we don't want a guy that keeps going off the road, and I must admit he's not covering himself in glory right now. He went off yesterday, he crashed at, I think he went off at Spa as well, and here he is going off yet again. And he's not even ahead of Johnny Herbert, who was absolutely trounced by Schumacher last year, and Herbert was quicker than him in practice here in qualifying, and there he is going to Williams to take the plum drive in motor racing. Makes you wonder what it's all about.
I'm not knocking Heinz-Harald Frentzen, but I do have to say that the situation is so disingenuous involving Frank Williams and the way he's handling his drivers.
Schumacher gets the fastest lap, as you can see. That's a pretty good time. So he's creeping up on a lazy. And of course, we know Schumacher, boy, give him something in front, give him the bit between the teeth, and he goes for it. But it's the only way he drives. Eddie Irvine is distant, but he's in third place with Villeneuve behind him. So maybe Jacques does have a minor problem. But of course, at this point, we don't know what it is. Let's hope it's nothing too major. Schumacher follow with Berger out with electrical problems we just heard. So it's the lazy Schumacher and Irvine not too far behind Schumacher.
Seats for this race were sold out weeks ago. Well over 100,000 people jamming this racetrack to watch their heroes in action. Right now, they're getting everything they wanted, we will assume, with Jean Alesi, former Ferrari driver, leading Michael Schumacher, who currently leads the team.
And of course, Alesi is going to be driving the race of his life simply because there's talk of him maybe being bought out of his contract at Benetton so that they can put Damon Hill in that drive. Yesterday, his lawyer, apparently Damon's lawyer, was in the Benetton motorhome nearly most of the day, from what we understand from the press this morning. So that is very interesting, and we'll see just what happens. It'd be logical for Renault to have a #1 on their car for their last season in Formula One. That is assuming that Damon wins the World Championship, which right now doesn't look that too promising. Of course, with him out of the race and Villeneuve well on the way to picking up a good podium finish. A long way to go yet, though.
Let's take a look at the cars out of the race. David Coulthard out early for the second straight year. Olivier Panis gone. Gerhard Berger gone. Damon Hill out of the race. That, of course, the most important one thus far. Giovanni Lavaggi parked in the pits in his minority. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, the most recent retiree. Of the 20 cars that started, 14 are still running. There you see the gap.
0.2 of a second, or just a 1/10 of a second off that time. Schumacher reeling in Alesi very slowly. Most awful position to be in for Alesi. He's sitting there knowing that the best driver in the world is just gnawing away at his lead. And behind there was just a distant shot of Villeneuve catching up with Eddie Irvine.
In the background, you see the remains of the old banking. One of the most familiar vistas in motorsports, the front straightaway at Monza. A military depot in World War II. There's another of the Tyrrells. That's Mika Salo, who scored his first Grand Prix championship points in this race. He, too, is now gone. This is extraordinary. Even for Italy.
We got two Jordans in 5th and 6th, and both those drivers are reported to be leaving the team at the end of the year. So who knows what is happening. It always turns up the most unusual result, as we remember from last year, Bob.
Schumacher is closing in on Jean Alesi. He's taken another couple of tenths off of him, setting fastest lap in the process. We'll be back with more live from Monza, Italy in just a moment. In that championship this year, he has been mathematically eliminated through the Parabolica and onto the front straightaway. You see the gap back to Jacques Villeneuve, and here is the reason for that. Just a moment ago, Villeneuve pitted the Williams for suspected damage. Rocketed back onto the racetrack, an 8.8 second stop, not very long. They checked the car over, sent him back out, but he drops from 4th to 10th, out of the points. A year ago at this race, neither Williams driver, David Coulthard or Damon Hill, finished, and in fairly spectacular fashion. Coulthard had a mechanical problem, spun off. And Damon Hill collided with Michael Schumacher while trying to pass a back marker. It was in the midst of that lack of results that Frank Williams made a quick decision to make a driver change. And he admits that he and Patrick Head, his technical director and part owner of the team, decided they needed a change to sort of liven up the team and change their luck. So they fired David Coulthard. And this year, they have let go of Damon Hill, who may well be the 1996 world champion. It would mark the 4th time, if it happens, that a world champion has left the Williams team after claiming his title. As you see, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who will be a Williams driver next year, walking in. Nelson Piquet left in 1987 after winning the title, took Honda with him to the Lotus team. Then Nigel Mansell in 1992, Alain Prost, who retired in 1993 after his 4th world title. And now it may be Damon Hill who takes the #1 to some other team.
Well, there's
Smokey Minardi, Ford V8 in the back of Pedro Lami's machine, the Portuguese driver. He too is done.
I'm trying to get it out of the way. Just now we saw a tire lying in the middle of the track and somebody...
All this business of corner workers running back and forth across the racetrack.
Well, they're pretty fit. They've been running across picking up bits of tire. It's just like an amateur race in Czechoslovakia when they put tires up. I mean, it's unbelievable. They stick them out there with these top-level drivers. There should be a better way of policing it. And the drivers know that if they go over the curbs, they're going to be in the sand, so they don't choose to go there, believe me. They'd rather not bounce off the curbs at all, but it is the quick way through. Schumacher is really working up the back of Alesi right now, chiseling away at it. Hakkinen got a bit of opposite lock on through there, but he's working his way back up through the field. He's just ahead of Villeneuve, which should be very interesting, because obviously they're both very, very fast cars and very fast drivers, and they're both going to have to work their way through this group in front, which is they're all having quite a battle up there.
There's the gap from Alesi to Hakkinen. Villeneuve runs 1 place back behind Mika, but as you can see, he is well back up the racetrack. Mika Hakkinen, very much unconfirmed for the McLaren Mercedes team next year. Ron Dennis says he and the Mercedes management will sit down next week to look at drivers for 1997. They say they don't have to make a commitment in that week, but you can imagine they will be making one very, very shortly. And surprisingly, Mika Hakkinen, or perhaps not so surprisingly, Mika Hakkinen is not confirmed for next year. Among the men being bandied about, Ralf Schumacher, Michael Schumacher's younger brother, who tested again for the team last week and did well, finishing just a couple of tenths off of Gerhard Berger's best in the Benetton. And of course, Damon Hill might also be in the frame at McLaren as well.
But the German team, the Mercedes, certainly want a German, or would like to have a German driver in it, and it would be logical to put young Schumacher in there. As Michael said, he's obviously going incredibly well, because he's 6 years behind Michael in experience, etc. And if to go out and do a time better than Alain Prost and a fraction slower than Berger is outstandingly good for a young driver at this stage of the proceedings.
Think of what a victory here, and of course it's a long way away. We're still very early in the race. The Benetton team, whose sponsor contracts are based on performance, they have not had a lot of that this year as they get used to a new driver lineup. John Alesi lit a fire last week by telling an Italian newspaper that virtually the only car he's had in his 6-year Formula One career, make that 7-year Formula One career, that gave him a shot at victory was the Tyrrell he drove first back in 1990 when he battled with Ayrton Senna on the streets of Phoenix at the U.S. Grand Prix. He said the team just has not come together. Of course, that got the attention of his team leader, Flavio Briatore.
He also said that he liked driving the Brinderton was like driving a taxi. And so Briatore said, well, he perhaps you better check Berger's times, who's always quicker than him, and see what he's up to. So there's not too much love lost within the team at the moment. I just can't imagine driving in a team with that sort of atmosphere. Not much fun at all. And I think in the same way, Damon is far better out of the team that he was in, make his own way. And as Schumacher said the other day, then we really will see just how good Damon Hill is. For the moment, of course, Damon could well be replacing Alesi, because it'd be wonderful, of course, for Renault to have Hill in their car. But with him out of the points right at the moment, and in fact Villeneuve out of the points at the moment, there doesn't look too much change in the championship points at the end of it.
As you see there, Eddie Irvine in third, well back behind this battle as the Ferraris run 2-3.
Let's be fair to Eddie. They came to this weekend, and Schumacher had 3 gearboxes, 3 7-speed gearboxes set out for him, and Eddie doesn't get it. He gets the droppings at the end of it and had a 6-speed gearbox. Schumacher, in fact, ran the spare car this morning in warm-up, which was the 6-speed gearbox, because he wanted to save his 7-speed gearbox for the race later on in the day, because we know at Spa he had about 2 laps left in that gearbox, otherwise it would have fallen apart. So they are still very fragile, and Eddie certainly doesn't get the best run of the lot as far as cars are concerned, and obviously technical advancement.
You saw David Coulthard still walking in. Interesting to hear Michael Schumacher discuss that his gearbox would not have gone another couple of laps at Spa. I'm sure Jacques Villeneuve still ruining the fact that a blown pit stop prevented him from winning that race. There you see Yukio Katayama in the Tyrrell pits.
Well, of course, the blown pit stop did ruin his race, but in fact, if his radio had been working properly, or he could have understood what they were being saying, he would have won the race from that side of it. So it was a major technical disaster throughout for Williams that weekend.
Had a look at Katayama's Tyrrell. The Tyrrell team was thinking about running front tires on all 4 corners of the car in qualifying, as they did in qualifying for the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim this year. But Goodyear's engineers stepped in and said, no, do not do that for safety reasons on this incredibly fast Monza circuit. Michael Schumacher drawing ever closer to Jean Alesi for the race lead.
It could be quite difficult for him to overtake Alesi. I think we have 2 of the hardest men in racing about to fight wheel for wheel. And of course, as we all know, they can afford to wait to the pit stop and then just see what happens. Look at Michael closing up on the entry into that chicane.
Now, Jean Alesi has been complaining about bad brakes on the Benetton all weekend. That's the last thing he needs right now, is fading brakes when he has the 2-time world champion bearing down on him with every lap.
The technology is such that the brake temperatures are so astronomical in these cars that they don't get it right. Oh, there's a bit of weaving around here going on because Villeneuve wants to overtake, coming down into the parabolica. Is he going to let him? Oh dear, oh dear.
That's Katayama.
But it is for a place, of course. But nevertheless, you'd think, you know, he knows when a guy comes up at 2 seconds, 3 seconds a lap quicker that he does mean business. You don't then go and hold him up. There's some pretty abominable driving further down the field and totally unnecessary in my book. All right, these 2, there's no way Alesi should give way to let Schumacher through, but Katayama, who really isn't in the same class, shouldn't even be probably in the race, is out there groveling around, and Villeneuve's all over the back of him at 3 seconds a lap. Ridiculous. Now, Hakkinen is gradually working his way through here, but he's finding it very, very hard to get past these 2 cars in 7th and 8th spot in front of him.
Denise, as you see the gap to Hakkinen, you don't even need the graphic to tell you that Hakkinen is right there, and between them is Johnny Herbert in the Sauber Ford Cosworth. Herbert, of course, the defending champion of this race, and a man very much in the frame for Jackie Stewart's debut team in 1997. Still no word on what Sauber will be using in the way of engines for next year. Peter Sauber, for his part, has been very generous with Heinz-Harald Frenzen's move to Williams. He said that's great. If it works for him, they want him to have it.
Alesi whipping across the road to make sure Schumacher doesn't try too much of a move around the outside, because Schumacher was looking that way. Not that you'd overtake on the outside coming out of the Curva Grande, but it's certainly a thought. It's strange, these 2 aren't using all the curbs. It's almost like Schumacher is coasting, waiting for the fuel stop, and then let that sort it out, which we know is what a lot of them look to and hope they get a better pit stop and lay the pressure on overtaking till later in the race.
Into the Ascari chicane. Michael Schumacher drawing ever closer. We want to be there when he attacks, so we'll take a break and be back in a moment. Back live in Italy, about a lap from where we left you. No change in the running order. Jean Alesi leading Michael Schumacher, who draws ever closer in the Ferrari. 19 laps complete, 53 scheduled. There you see the running order. Ferrari's running 2-3, much to the delight of this crowd. There's a replay of the Jordan teammates. Barrichello on the left, Brundle on the right. in a race of their own, approaching one of the chicanes. I'm not sure what that was supposed to represent.
They certainly don't need to hit one another. He's had a lousy year as far as incidents are concerned, and both those boys need to get a good result here. Of course, I don't know if you appreciate, but all these cars are running a very low downforce setup. Hence, they're sliding a little bit more. When they bounce quite badly. Obviously, there's 4 straights here of over 200 miles an hour. One of them 209 miles an hour. Schumacher was pulling the other day down into the Goodyear chicane, the first chicane. So consequently, they don't have too much downforce. You can see there's just a single wing, or very little amount of wing on the back of the cars, and a small amount of downforce on the front to get the ultimate in top speed that they can get down the straights.
There's David Coulthard explaining the bad news to the team, including engineer Dave Brown. Meanwhile, the battle continues on the racetrack. You see the cars working. They get up on those curbs, and you risk losing all of your downforce and causing yourself lots of problems. Jacques Villeneuve has been particularly vocal about the height of the curbs this weekend.
He will be vocal about the height of the tires, I feel sure.
What an astonishing development. Damon Hill is out of the race. Jacques Villeneuve runs deep in the pack. You see the gap from Brundle to his teammate Barrichello. Both of the Jordans in the points.
Well, Häkkinen's worked his way past one of those cars. He's now working his way. Just see what happens to try and get past Denise in front of him. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. It's always very difficult when there are 2 cars to overtake, because there's no room to slip by one and dip in between them. You have to overtake both, which is a total impossibility in Formula 1. But the group does seem to have broken up somewhat now.
I want to remind you about great college football action coming your way here on ESPN2 next Saturday, September 14th. A triple header beginning at 12:30 p.m. Eastern with Auburn versus Mississippi, a battle in the SEC. Then Vanderbilt, Alabama. More great SEC action at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. And the nightcap on Saturday night, Kansas visiting Texas Christian at 9 p.m. Eastern.
The one thing you notice at Monza, which right this second you can't hear, but you start to hear it now, is the echoing, the most astonishing noise. It's obviously to do with the banking around the outside and the woods around. And Monza seems to have a unique noise over any other circuit. The noise seems to hang between the trees. And when you're walking through the forest, you can just hear the screaming of the engines. You can tell exactly where they are. It's the most eerie feeling and very captivating when you go there for the first time.
There are very few places in this world like Monza on a Grand Prix weekend.
Villeneuve's not having too good a time. He's a second slower on his best lap than Alesi's best lap. So he's not making up a dramatic amount of time here.
Here comes Eddie Irvine. Yep, with his head tilted over to get maximum air into that air intake. The Williams team mentioned that they were much slower than they felt they should have been in our most recent race in the high-speed circuit at Spa in Belgium. I wonder if they're having a similar problem this weekend. Adrian Newey designed the car. As you see, Michael Schumacher has reset fast lap. Newey said we basically missed it somehow. We dropped the ball on setup for race day, and we weren't as quick as we should have been.
But they said they knew what it was, which is the strange thing. I think, what about Adrian Newey, Bob? We've heard quite a lot about him this week.
Well, that's true. We're hearing that he may be shopping in services around to some other teams in the wake of Williams' treatment of Damon Hill, with whom Adrian Newey, a very thoughtful man, and right now the hottest designer in Formula 1, 8 Constructors World Championships, and Newey has had a hand in most of them. He is signed to the team through 1999. Frank Williams said he expects him to honor his contract, but apparently Adrian Newey is not a happy man given the way Williams has handled its driver situation.
And he has been offered a fortune, apparently millions of dollars, to actually go to Ferrari. Agnelli the other day, the president of Fiat, who owns Ferrari, says he couldn't understand why they weren't doing any better, and he suggested that maybe they should hire Williams to run the Ferrari team. And when asked about Schumacher earning so much money, he said he deserves even more than that to drive that load of rubbish. So the outspoken Agnelli says more, but I don't think it's totally fair. Schumacher's obviously got a very good car. Eddie Irvine is not far behind him, just about 10 seconds behind him. He's doing a super job. So the Ferraris certainly are doing very well at the moment.
Let's listen in to Schumacher. Kiss of death every time you want to watch the onboard.
Here they are coming up to laps and tail markers. First time I've actually seen it happen. No doubt it's happened somewhere.
Schumacher takes a look down the inside into the Lesmos.
Lazy wasn't too quick out of that turn. Obviously, Schumacher doesn't want to stir his gearbox too much. It obviously is the weak link in the car, and he's playing it very, very cool indeed. But he would like to get by because he's getting a lot of turbulence from the back of Lazy's car, one assumes. But I don't think it's quite... Oh, Irvine, not again. Irvine pulling off. That is cruel. That is just tragic.
4 of his 5 most recent retirements have been due to gearbox woes. You heard him say in James Allen's off-track buzz.
Oh, dear. Did he hit those tires? That could be something to do with his woes, but I would have thought he could have continued after that.
He said this has been his worst year in racing in terms of retirements. Pretty outspoken for a Ferrari driver. 9th straight DNF for Eddie Irvine. It's like Ricardo Rosset in the TWR Arrows just ahead. Here's another look.
Oh, his wheel finally broke right away. Those tires, all right, he shouldn't have hit them, but oh, it's just, you know, these guys, they're on such a limit. They're right up on the curbs. The curbs are so unforgiving, and there he is, whacked straight in the tires, breaks the wheel away.
Left front suspension.
But there is nobody to blame but himself. He knew the tires were there. But what I don't quite go along with is, oh, they're right up behind Rosset right now. He's going to hold them up just a little bit. But, of course, this could be what Schumacher wants. The only little bit of... You just need a Lazy just to back off a second, not to be able to get his foot down when he wants, and Schumacher will be through.
Out of the Lesmos. Reaching up to 200 miles an hour under the bridge. And under a second one.
See the way Schumacher pulls out, just there, every lap he pulls out. There's obviously a lot of undulation, some bumps there, and he doesn't want to damage the bottom of the car more than he has to, so he sweeps out, pulls back in under braking. Otherwise, the car might go right down hard on the bump stop, shoot the front of the car up, and he loses a certain amount of adhesion. Haze come off the back of Lazy's car as he backs off every lap as he comes down there, and a very rich mixture they're running, obviously. Doing something like 2.5 to 3 miles to the gallon.
Front of the crowds now.
But Schumacher is looking to have a go. He must be thinking it's time to go by. His visor's covered in oil, dust, dirt, all sorts of things. Plus he's breathing in those foul fumes that they have from the back of the car. And that isn't any good for a driver. In fact, it ends up making you feel a little bit dizzy. Here we have a shot of Villeneuve having a moment, locking up his left front wheel as he comes into the Goodyear chicane. Oh, and he takes off.
Completely shot the chicane.
Yeah, which he did yesterday. Am I right in saying I think he went through there yesterday in practice too? But he did a very good avoiding job and didn't damage anything. That's the main thing. But my goodness, he would have done if it hit those tires.
Eddie Irvine walking home once again. Jean Alesi took a shot recently, having seen Jacques Villeneuve out there in a women's monthly magazine in Britain called The Company Magazine. Did you hear? Jean Alesi was voted the second best-looking man in Formula One. The reason I called it a hit was he was voted second to Jacques Villeneuve. Am I missing something here?
I thought they said sexy, Bob. Not good looking, but I guess well, the way you look at it, I think Alesi, I don't know, I don't fancy him very much. But,
good news
he's
there.
got some pretty good... You'll be pleased about that, everybody, I'm sure, but...
This is for position. Hakkinen has 6th, Denise has 5th, and Hakkinen wants it. Denise has come quite a ways this year. He was the subject of a magazine article in Great Britain. His performances, especially relative to the best measure of all, his teammate, have really come on this year. Jacques Villeneuve might argue with that. He and Denise had a contretemps on Friday, or is it Saturday morning here in Monza. Denise didn't see Villeneuve coming. The result was the Frenchman spinning into the wall.
Well, he knows Hakkinen's there, boy, because he's weaving all over the bloke, ready to stop him. You have to give Denise his due. He's called a very rich guy, and he is. His father's one of the wealthiest men, owns a major supermarket chain in Brazil, but nonetheless, he's doing a very good job. And to hold off Hakkinen, even for a couple of laps, is no mean feat in the car that is inferior. But in front of course, this little group, you're going to have the interesting situation of... hello, who have we got in the pits now? One of the...
Denise.
Oh,
that will move Hakkinen up into 5th place. We're getting pit action. Jacques Villeneuve has been in and out with damage to one of his tires. They think he might have hit. a lone tire from those tire piles at the chicanes. There he is, just ahead of the race leaders. Things not going well for Williams. Here is Jacques Villeneuve, just ahead of race leader Jean Alesi, and behind him Michael Schumacher. 3 pit stops for Jacques Villeneuve. He is well out of the points in this race. His teammate and the championship leader, Damon Hill, is out of the race after hitting one of those tire piles in the chicanes and spinning. Jacques Villeneuve has also hit an errant tire from those piles, and he has had to pit. He is in deep trouble and is not likely to score points in this race. The race leader, right there, Jean Alesi, with Schumacher just behind him, and Rubens Barrichello for the Jordan team is in the 3rd podium position. His teammate Martin Brundle had it before making his pit stop.
Yes, I think these drivers might be a little bit more vocal after this event about those tyres. I don't think they were vocal enough beforehand. They all seem very complacent, and Hill saying, well, we'll see what happens. But he saw what happened. He hit him and put him out of World Championship points. I think there were a lot of complaints made about this afterwards, but what's the good of that after the event? They just shouldn't be there in those 2 first chicanes. Absolute joke.
Villeneuve on fresh tires, Alesi on used tires, and still Villeneuve is 4/10 of a second slower on each lap.
Villeneuve must be wondering, just what am I going to do? They're quicker than me, but he can't very well just pull over and let them through after you, Claude. Villeneuve said he was looking forward for a dice with Schumacher this race, but I don't think he meant to have it this way.
Ferrari stands to benefit from the split between Marlboro and McLaren. We expect a lot of that Philip Morris money to move to the Ferrari team. In fact, it may be named Marlboro Ferrari next year.
Well, so reputedly, Ron Dennis was offered $20 million by 20 million pounds, should I say, $30 million by Marlboro, and he turned it down. And the reputed figure from West is $60 million, which is 40 million pounds, a tremendous amount of money.
Of course, there's been a lot of talk about the impact of federal government's proposed regulations on tobacco advertising and its impact on motorsports. The United States isn't the only country thinking that way. In the British Medical Journal recently, a columnist called for a ban on tobacco advertising of all sorts in Great Britain as well. And of course, it is current throughout Europe. So tough days may be ahead from a financial point of view for motorsports. You see Villeneuve letting the 2 race leaders go through. Johnny Herbert, defending champion at the Italian Grand Prix, in and out of the pits. He is in position to score some points.
And that's one in the eye for Heinz Harald. I don't know why we're sort of anti-Heinz Harald. I guess we always feel that drivers that get to Formula One, to the top team in Formula One, should get there on a certain amount of ability and results. And we don't feel that Frenzen's there for that reason.
I'd like to state again, if you'll permit me, I am not against Heinz Harald Frentzen. I think it's a great opportunity for him. He's a great guy and a fine driver. But it just seems so illogical on the face of it. Frank Williams is hiring a reputation. And I blame, if anything, I blame Frank Williams. He's been so disingenuous about this whole thing. Damon Hill and his attorney say that Frank told them earlier this year he wanted to wait and see how Damon's year went. He had given up on 3 world champions, and he had taken a beating for it from his sponsors, and Frank Williams said, I don't want to do that again.
Well, there you go. How times change. We just heard that, in fact, the Benetton crew are getting ready for a pit stop, so this should open up the front of the field a bit, and no doubt Schumacher will be moving in soon afterwards.
Not to belabor the point, but I will. When Damon, in his press conference earlier this week, was pressed about, did you ask Frank for a reason why he wasn't going to have you? He said, yes, I did, but I'm not going to tell you what Frank told me. He then went on to utter the soundbite that we offered up at the top of the show. He said, I worked very hard over the winter to make myself a leading driver if I wasn't already one, which by implication means that was the reason Frank gave him. I just don't think you're capable of handling Schumacher. Alesi dives for the pits. We'll have a new race leader in Michael Schumacher. The Benetton team prepares to go to work. This is a key pit stop. They'll have to beat the Ferrari team.
And they're not doing a very good job just yet. Not bad, but it's a 9-second stop. They got it. There's the Ferrari pit there, waiting, no doubt, for Schumacher to come in any second.
Off the limiter, back up to racing speeds. He'll have to make time now because Michael Schumacher, who is the master at the fast lap before coming into the pits, will be coming in next. The Ferrari pit stops have been spot on in the second half of the season. Very, very quick. And now they have a mark to shoot for, the 9-second stop recorded by the Benetton team.
And of course, Schumacher and Ferrari have done six testing sessions here at the Monza circuit. It is their home circuit. They've done race distance, and they even did a race distance last week with the 6-speed gearbox, not the 7, and it went very, very successfully indeed, so they know just how to actually race-craft this event.
Rubens Barrichello in and out for his single stop. A flood of Ferrari hats and flags in the grandstands, and why not? Their man Michael Schumacher is now the race leader, looking for his second straight win. And when was the last time we said that about Ferrari?
You'd better if you didn't say that just yet, Bob. I hate saying it too soon.
Well, I know when I said it. I said it after Michael Schumacher demonstrated again his mastery of the rain in Spain. We'll see you in a moment.
Oh, what a pit stop. But like the fuel line just stayed in the car a fraction too long, and he did it 8.8.2 quicker, of course, than Alesi.
Welcome back to Monza, where Michael Schumacher makes his one and only pit stop, and the crowd goes crazy.
He's in the lead, and there's Alesi behind him. Listen to that crowd roar.
And the reason for that is, while we were away in break, Michael Schumacher reset fast lap of the race en route to the pits.
You're just a genius, Bob. You said he'd do it, and he did it. But what a genius the man is. On very, very worn tires. He's been sitting behind Alesi for the whole of the session. Obviously stressed the tires up quite a lot, and he goes and gets the fastest lap on the last lap of his stint.
Mika Hakkinen making his stop. A longer one for the McLaren driver.
Particularly magnificent is the fact that that happened it was right in front of an Italian crowd with, of course, Italian pit crew doing the job. So real teamwork there to get Schumacher out in front. Now, of course, he can set his own scene here, and we'll see Schumacher at his best. Let's just pray and hope that car lasts for Ferrari.
Alesi second, Hakkinen third, Martin Brundle and Rubens Barrichello fourth and fifth for Eddie Jordan. Pedro Diniz in the Ligier in sixth, in position to pick up a point. So the point standings could take a beating this weekend, but the most important points of all, those at the top of the chart for the World Driving Championship, it appears will not change this weekend. Damon Hill is out of the race. Jacques Villeneuve runs well back in 9th place as Michael Schumacher ducks his head down to get air into that Ferrari V10.
And he's just going to stamp his authority on this race right now. He's going to put in some very fast laps. He's 4.6 seconds of Alesi. And he only had 0.2 of a second on the pit stop, so he pulled out a lot on the last lap of his stint and the first lap of his second stint, as we see him now.
There you see the numbers on Michael Schumacher. His best finish here at Monza, third, back in 1992. Hard to believe there's a track Michael Schumacher hasn't won on. In his incredible career, we talked about it in Belgium, 83 starts now, 51 podium finishes in the 82 previous starts, and 51 point-scoring finishes. He is absolutely phenomenal. Most of those point-scoring finishes have been podiums. In fact, only a handful have not. I believe the number was 8.
Here he is sweeping through the Ascari chicane, leading on down the back chute, down towards the Parabolica, up to 6th. 7th gear he's in now, pulling just over 200 miles an hour. And the gap is up to 5 seconds. He's pulling out 3/4 of a second a lap on Alesi, which must be very galling for poor old Jean, thinking that he had the race fairly well in his hands, but there's never in your hands when Schumacher's around.
Of course, what this big Ferrari boosting crowd must be mindful of, including the big German contingent, is that in those 82 starts, 51 point-scoring finishes, he failed to finish any of the other remaining 31 races. So, in the spirit of Gilles Villeneuve, score or drive the wheels off it trying. There's Hakkinen.
Yes, he's certainly not an also-ran, is our Michael.
Mika Hakkinen said something interesting. From 211 miles an hour You brake for these chicanes coming down to 55 miles an hour, and you do it at the 150-meter board. That's about 450 feet to go from 210 plus to 55.
That is what happens, and that's no wonder that we don't see any overtaking under braking. Oh, here's another moment.
Johnny Herbert.
Oh, Johnny, don't hit those tires. Oh, he must miss them, and he's so relieved. He can continue. I mean, he really needs a good result. It'd be wonderful for him in that little team. He's done so well. He's stood up. He hasn't said anything anti about Frentzen. Frentzen gets all the publicity. Johnny gets nothing. But lately, Johnny's been there all the time. He's been pushing Frentzen for times. And, of course, he's also won 2 Grand Prix.
Michael Schumacher could be joined by his brother Ralph in Formula One next year. They would become the 10th team of brothers in Formula One, joining Tino and Vittorio Brambilla, Corrado and Teo Fabi, Emerson and Wilson Fittipaldi, Pedro and Ricardo Rodriguez, Ian and Jody Scheckter, Jackie and Jimmy Stewart, Gilles and Jacques Villeneuve, Jacques the Elder, the current Jacques Villeneuve's uncle, Graham and Peter Whitehead, and Joachim and Manfred Winkelhock of Germany. There you see the cars out of the race. Now the question is, can Michael Schumacher hold on in the Ferrari? No one in the world does it better. Stay with us. Back in 1988, the late Ayrton Senna was leading the Italian Grand Prix at Monza handily when he made a misbegotten attempted pass on Jean-Louis Schlesser, a sports car race, but inexperienced in Formula One, sitting in for the Williams team. Senna found himself up on the curbs, out of the race, and that handed the victory to the Ferrari team. A 1-2 for Gerhard Berger and Michele Alboreto, just weeks after the passing of the old man himself, Enzo Ferrari, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house at Monza, September 1988. Welcome back to Monza. In replay, see Michael Schumacher ripping a tear off of his visor. He is the race leader for Ferrari, waking up the echoes of Italian's Grand Prix past.
Beautiful. Every lap, he's within 6 inches of that little second stack of tires on the right. The whole race, I've watched him, and he gets within 6 inches of those tires. He does not want to hit those, that is for sure. But to talk about precision, that man is right on when it comes to being on the line. Perfect line every time. I watched him on Friday in practice, and he was coming through that chicane absolutely broadside, both blocks. It was unbelievable to watch. Might not have been the quickest way, boy, but was he the master of being sideways? And it makes you wonder, because all these drivers are an outstanding quality, but you don't see many of them as sideways as Schumacher. There was a white flag out there that means there's a car running slowly in front of you or a slow vehicle on the road. I wonder what that was, but there it is.
There it is. It looks like Jasper Verstappen in the TWR Arrows. They continue to test Bridgestone tires, and of course, the downside of that is Goodyear provides them with no tires whatsoever for testing. So they have to do their setup at the racetrack, and there's Rosset.
The other one, he's in the stand. He should try. Oh dear, they are having a miserable time. But of course, once that step on the front digs into the shingle or into those gravel, then he's history. That's terribly, all in virtually in one lap. Both of the cars have gone out, unless this is him here.
That is him. I'm sorry. We identified him as Verstappen. It was not. It was Rosset.
It was Rosset. Look at his front wheel just breaks away. He must have hit a tire wall, I guess, on the way there. That's why he was driving slowly and had no control of his steering.
Well, don't worry about putting the steering wheel back on, Ricardo. They're going to have to yank that one out with a crane.
Yes, that's right.
Meanwhile, continuing on his merry way, Michael Schumacher. We mentioned at the top of our show in our on-track buzz that there have been refinements to the newly proposed Concord Agreement. And incidentally, apparently the Williams team has now asked for permission to sign that agreement from the other teams. And we expect that the other two holdout teams, McLaren and Tyrrell, will do so soon as well. The refinements include going back to 3-day Grand Prix weekends. They have proposed 2-day weekends that apparently will not take place. You see the numbers on Schumacher and Alesi in first and second. The 1-week testing ban before a Grand Prix weekend has also been changed slightly to allow a 50-kilometer shakedown test. Oh, there was Rosette's problem. Cracking that first pile of tires. Excuse me, that's...
Oh, it can't... Schumacher. It's got to be Schumacher.
Schumacher hit the tires.
Doesn't need to... It looks like he knocked the wheel, but he can't hit it, can he?
How can that car still be whole?
Well, that was the tire. You see, that's what we thought might have happened to Hill. You come whistling through the corner, and there is a tire dangling in the road. Oh, Villeneuve's in the pit yet again.
So the Williams day gets blacker and blacker. Both Villeneuve and Hill have now failed to score 4 times this year. But in 2 of his 4 cases, it has been mechanical problems for Damon Hill. Here's Schumacher again.
Well, he doesn't hit that first set. Oh, yes, he does. That's the set he hits with his left front wheel. Look at it. You see the angle of that wheel as it came back on the road? It looks like he could... He didn't damage anything, but my goodness, you see the angle that had. And, of course, that is the wheel that around here has all the loading on it. We'll see on his lap times just that there's been any damage. He drove with damaged steering at Spa and said he didn't like it. But here he's just still giving it some, and the car looks true enough. The wheels don't look out of shape. Be interesting to get an in-cockpit sort of a shot over his shoulder and just see where his steering, his hands are on the wheel.
Now that recalls the good old days. It is remarkable, though. After we talked about him being inch perfect, he goes up and flouts that pile of tires. We'll talk more about the Concord Agreement in just a moment as you get Michael's perspective on it. And well, it looks like more of a glancing blow there. And you see one hand comes off the wheel. If this was a stock car race, we'd be speculating about how much it affected the toe. We'll be back in a moment to Monson. Hey, overhead, welcome back. What the heck? We don't have to be in a stock car race. Derek Bell, Bob Barsha with you. Let's talk about the toe. During the commercial break, Italian television showed us endless replays of Michael Schumacher pounding that pile of tires with his left front, and then he went out and lapped a 1/10 of a second faster than his previous one. So obviously, toe, camber caster, whatever he did, the Ferrari, it seems to be working just fine. Let's take a look at our Haviland race recap. The race leader, of course, is Michael Schumacher, has led since lap 31. Gives him about 9 laps in the lead. We've had 2 lead changes between 3 drivers, principally Jean Alesi and Michael Schumacher. Here are the drivers out of the race: Coulthard, Panis, Berger, and Lavaggi. But perhaps most importantly, in terms of the World Championship, Damon Hill is out of the race. And his only rival for that title, Jacques Villeneuve, runs back in 9th place following a long series of pit stops. Ricardo Rosset, the most recent retirement. My, how they do love their Ferraris here in the temple of the Tifosi, worldwide Ferrari fanatics.
It must be Italy, that's for sure. There can't be much wrong with that left front wheel, toe in, camber, toe out, or whatever, because when he struck that tire wall, that wheel had the most amazing amount of angle on it. I've never seen a wheel go up in the air and come back down again when you consider they have no suspension movement at all. But the car is still running, and there's 10 laps to go. Must be pretty nerve-wracking 10 laps for Michael, but he's clocking in quick laps every lap. As I said, the load is on that left outside wheel. Left front wheel, and therefore if it hasn't gone yet, I guess it's not going to go, but one can never say that until that flag drops. Häkkönen's done a tremendous job. He drove up from being half to 3/4 of a lap behind after that second lap incident. Here he is, worked his way back up to 3rd with Brundle and Barrichello very behind, and this will be very, very gratifying for Eddie Jordan. And they're both running nose to tail in 4th and 5th places, which is super for Jordan. He needs that at this time of the year, particularly with sponsorship time coming around when you've got to discuss it with his sponsors. And, of course, he's looking to pick up a top driver. If his drivers can finish in this good position, well, who knows what sort of driver he can get next year. There's talk of Damon going there, as we know, and even a Lazy going from Benetton back to Jordan, and Hill taking his place. But there'll be a lot of behind-the-scenes shuffling going on there, I've no doubt.
There's the second place Benetton of Jean Alesi, running well behind Schumacher now, but a podium position in store for the Frenchman if he can hold on. 4th in the championship, and just 1 point behind Michael Schumacher. That gap will stretch to 5 if the points were awarded right now. Getting back to the Concord briefly, refinements to be included: 3-day race weekends, 50-kilometer shakedown test, an off-season test probably organized by FOCA, perhaps for South Africa during the winter, and 2 extra tires for qualifying. But perhaps most important, the teams are raising questions about the succession in terms of the office of the international rights holder, and that man is Bernie Ecclestone, who takes in hundreds of millions of dollars each year. The teams want to know when Mr. Ecclestone, who is now deep into his 60s, decides to hang it up, what will happen to those commercial rights. They would like that spelled out in the next Concord Agreement that will take the teams and the running of Formula One into the next century.
As you correctly said, Bob, that is why the Williams, McLaren, and of course Tyrrell wouldn't agree initially. They've now been asked to be included in it because they were going to be several $1 million short on travel expenses, if that's the right word, for next season. They'd have no rights at all if they didn't sign to any of the technical adjustments that are made in Formula One, so therefore they had to go along with it. Plus, it meant they could have come and raced in America. They could have come as McLaren Racing, could have come as Williams to drive in Indy cars. But if you're part of the Concord Agreement, a signatory to it, you're not allowed to enter any other open-wheel formula without permission, which means they wouldn't get it anyway to go and do Indy cars. But I don't know that they would want to, as they're so busy doing their... Here we are. What are we doing here? Oh, it's just coming out of the curve, coming up onto the pit straight, out of the parabolic. I thought we're about to see a Lacey have a moment.
Speaking of Indy cars, don't forget the championship will be clinched today at Laguna Seca Raceway in Monterey, California. The Grand Prix of Monterey coming your way on ESPN today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. Pacific. Don't miss it. Alex Zanardi on pole, Jimmy Vasser, Michael Andretti, Alonso Jr. all going for the title. And the champion will be crowned today on ESPN. Michael Schumacher still lapping comfortably ahead of Jean Alesi.
But Alesi has picked up the pace a bit. He's actually got into the 26s on that last lap. Shows he's pressing on a bit. But Michael is still not giving any quarter, and he isn't about to let Alesi catch him at this stage unless something foul goes wrong.
There's Pedro Diniz just ahead, taking a quick look in his mirror, seeing the race leader come looming up behind in the bright red Ferrari. Stay with us. Back live at the Cathedral to Motorsport. That is the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. Bob Varsha, Derek Bell, glad to have you with us. Beautiful afternoon in Italy, and nothing could be finer for this Ferrari crowd. Michael Schumacher in the bright red car leads. Sliding it through the corners. We like to have a race early on Sunday mornings, so there's something to talk about on RPM today. Coming up at noon today, right here on ESPN2, and then tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, all the news of the day in motorsports, including last night's Winston Cup race won by, well, maybe I shouldn't tell you who won, and the Busch Grand National race being run today at Richmond International Speedway in deference to the weather situation up there in the wake of the hurricane. That race was postponed. It'll run today, and you'll see the highlights tonight along with all of the news in motorsports on RPM tonight here on ESPN2. Jacques Villeneuve came into this race with such high hopes. They certainly were boosted to an even higher level when he watched his teammate Damon Hill spin out of the race. But Villeneuve has not been able to capitalize, and with 5 laps remaining, Michael Schumacher has the race lead and the fastest lap. He just keeps going faster. In the Ferrari garage, once again, they must be stunned at what this man can do at the wheel of a Formula One car. Moments ago, we saw Niki Lauda standing out on the pit wall, a world champion for Ferrari, and a very, very discerning eye when it comes to talent in Formula One, and a very, very pragmatic man when it comes to the politics and commercial aspects of Formula One. When you bring up Michael Schumacher to Niki Lauda, he simply shakes his head in wonder.
I was with Niki Lauda last week in Austria, and I was saying, do you get to many of the races? Because we don't often see him, and you know, you might slip in and slip out. And he said, I very rarely go to the races these days. I'm so involved with my airline business. But there we go, as you said, the great Schumacher, and he's just done another quickest lap by 0.4 of a second, which must be very upsetting for poor Jean Alesi, who just got into the 26s, and then you find Schumacher goes a tad faster. Absolutely amazing performance when he doesn't really need to push the car to these limits, but the only thing he knows is pedal to the metal. With 4 laps to go, he could afford to back off and lose a second a lap, but he isn't about to do that.
That is not the Schumacher way. We'll take another break and be back with a run to the checkered flag. Stand by for more history from Italy. Live in Italy, Michael Schumacher, as we mentioned, is not letting up. Once again, he has reset fast lap.
look at the opposite lock as he goes through that chicane. He was doing that and a bit more on Friday, but wonderful to see him still giving it absolutely heat. Naturally, the tyres are probably going away a little bit, although he's still putting in some pretty good times. But the tyres must be sliding a little bit more. But of course, the track has a little bit more rubber on it than before, so therefore one cancels out the other a little bit.
You have to compliment his courage and skill, but he is leaving himself open to criticism here, driving the car as hard as he is this late in the race with that interval behind him as he closes up on the Jordan Peugeot twins. Rundle and Barrichello running in the points.
Yes, he could very well back off and finish. He'll finish behind those two. There's no way. I would have thought that he could get by them, but there are only 2 laps to go. But there's not really much point in battling away and taking risk with those two, because they seem to have each other off sometimes. It's best to keep right out of the picture as far as that's concerned and drop a second and a half to 2 seconds a lap. Jean isn't about to catch him at this point.
Ferrari tradition calls for the church bells to ring in the village of Maranello, where the most legendary name in motorsports is based. Those bells got kind of dusty in recent years, but Michael Schumacher certainly knocked the dust off with his masterful victory in the rain in Spain earlier this year, and another one at Spa in Belgium in the most recent round of our Formula One World Championship. Now he will have them reaching for those bell ropes again.
And of course, as Frank Williams said just the other day, he said, if Schumacher begins to get that Ferrari reliable, then we may as well go to church on Sundays and just pray for unreliability. Well, Frank is doing that right now, because he's got nothing much else to do with his man in 8th place.
Ironic, isn't it, that this supports Frank Williams in his decision to turn Damon Hill loose in order to get the best possible man he thinks he can find into the car to battle Michael Schumacher. The control, the influence that Michael Schumacher has over Formula One from the seat of his Ferrari. Not even the best car in the field, and everyone is watching Michael Schumacher constantly.
What I think is amazing is Schumacher has such a wonderful demeanor about him nowadays. He seems so charming and easygoing and laughing at briefings and chatting with the crowds. But I guess I would be if I was earning about 80 million a year. I expect I'd have a pleasant demeanor as well. But we're on the last lap, a very special lap for Michael right now. A unique experience for him to be leading in a Ferrari in Italy in front of this crazy crowd. And I'm sure not one person has left any of the stands, because they're seeing a historic moment in modern day racing as far as Ferrari is concerned and the new team under Jean Todt.
Well, part of Michael's attraction to all of us was his unbridled joy to find himself on a Formula One podium time after time. Didn't even have to win with the Benetton team. He was just delighted to be up there in front of his adoring fans, having scored world championship points. I imagine this will be a very special podium indeed.
As he said after qualifying, there he is, 3rd quickest in qualifying. And they said, what's it like though, Michael? And he said, 3rd place is all right. I think I can win from there.
Let's just kind of sit back and take it all in. Through the Ascari chicane, down the backstretch, through the Parabolica, to the checkered flag. This is a very special athlete at his very best. Enjoy it. Schumacher, the 3rd win of the year for the world champion. Jean Alesi comes home in uncontested 2nd. You saw Michael Schumacher wave his fist in the air. The closest race in Formula One history took place here at Monza back in '71, won by Peter Gethin. And there's a famous picture of 5 or 6 cars all crossing the line together. Gethin with his fist in the air. I saw in a recent interview he said he deliberately punched his fist in the air because he wasn't sure he had won, but he said, I know the Italians are so emotional. I figured if I made that gesture, they would think that I had won, and they would give me the win. The timers confirmed it by 1/100th of a second. Peter Gethin won the race. Just another page in the history book here at Monza. And now, Michael Schumacher goes in as a Ferrari winner. Here comes Mika Hakkinen to Congratulations to his team manager, Ron Dennis, who was recently awarded an honorary doctorate from De Montfort University in England. And congratulations to Mika Hakkinen as well, who has answered his critics about his speed. And now the fans take to the racetrack. Looks like a pretty firm police presence out there.
That's going to cause some trouble because Bernie does not like all these people on the track, and the race hasn't really finished. There's still guys coming up for finish line, still chasing for a place. Listen to that crowd.
Be kind of a shame, even if for safety reasons they try to keep the fans off the track. It is a tradition that the fans reclaim the track. There are your final results. Schumacher, Alesi, Hakkinen, Brundle, Barrichello, and Denise round out the points-paying positions 1 through 6. Jacques Villeneuve finishes 1 place out of the points and 1 lap down. This is officially the 10th fastest Formula One race of all time. There you see the cars not classified. Of course, the most important one of all, third from the bottom, Damon Hill, who got just a few laps into this race, leading the race handily, but he clipped the controversial tire piles on the apexes of the chicanes and spun and stalled. Here they come.
Look at all that red. The marshals in red and yellow. Team, though, absolutely so elated. So they should be.
There's the reaction from the pit wall. We'll take a quick timeout and return for what should be a joyous podium ceremony, and hopefully we'll be able to move to the press room to hear from our winner, Michael Schumacher. Stay with us for more. Back in Italy, where Michael Schumacher has claimed his 3rd win of the season, and with it has sent this crowd into rapture. There they are down on the track in the pit lane. Makes it difficult for the teams and the broadcasters and the officials. But this is what Formula One is about. Clambering over the camera stands, through the gravel traps. And there is the reason, the focus of their ardor. Michael Schumacher has done it again. In a car that is certainly not the match of the Williams-Renault, Michael Schumacher has brought glory again to Ferrari, extending their all-time record for Formula One victories by 1.
The old man would be proud today.
Might be a little bit staggered by the size of the check he has to write. Some $25 million a year, but a friend of mine in advertising used to say Ayrton Senna was worth that much because he would put the car on pole, he would win the race, there would be worldwide exposure for the team and its sponsors, and that sort of thing is worth a tremendous amount of money indeed.
What makes you think Michael's happy about this? Guy drives with no hands at all.
Well, Michael made it cleanly into Parc Fermé. Not sure about everyone else. Hopefully there's not a race car out there being dismantled.
Look at that. What an amazing sight. It just only happens here, doesn't it? We've seen it before, but here it really is vital. 1988, the last win, and there it is, right in front of the pits, right in front of the winner's stand. What a sight for that driver to stand up there, receive his award, looking down on that big emblem of Ferrari.
Let's take a look at the points championships. Of course, the most important point is that neither Damon Hill nor Jacques Villeneuve scored today, and it will be a 13-point championship as we move to the next round in Portugal in 2 weeks' time. 13-point margin with 20 points yet to be won. Jacques Villeneuve's job has just become a little bit tougher. As you see, Damon Hill once again clipped the tire piles in the chicanes, spun out of the race in the early going. Look at that crowd. And behind it, you notice the paddock area, best place in the world to shop for Motorsports memorabilia. There is Jean Todt, the Frenchman. The Italian press were screaming for his head in the depths of Ferrari's problems this year. Get towed out, they said. One of the great masterminds in motorsports who took Peugeot to sports car glory. and now appears to be turning Ferrari around. Now his team has won its second straight race, and suddenly Jean Todt will not be able to buy a drink in Italy.
No, that won't hurt him at all. He must have very shallow pockets anyway. He's not a very big guy, is he? But what a hero he is. How great he must feel. And Montezemolo, of course, the president of Ferrari, must be extremely happy. I haven't seen too much of him this weekend, but what a wonderful place to win. Look at that. That is one of those amazing sights you never see anywhere else, but in Italy. And you only see it when Ferrari win, of course. I think everybody that's packed around the circuit is now in front of the grandstands, in front of the podium, waiting for Schumacher to get up there, which can't be easy for him to find his way up there, but I'm sure he has a fair-sized escort.
That podium has seen so many great names. Look at that pit departure.
All at 50 miles an hour as well.
Yes, he got to 75 miles an hour in a hurry.
He wanted to get those hot rear tires up to temperature.
Sportsman so revered around the world now that he no longer lives in his home country. Monaco could not hold him in the famed Principality. Now he lives in Geneva, Switzerland, building a summer home in the island of Majorca. In the company of supermodels and worldwide celebrities, he enjoys his life, does Michael Schumacher, and he works hard for it. And most important of all, he delivers week in and week out. He has been announced. Listen to the crowd and look at Schumacher.
He looked a little bit happy as he came up there, didn't he?